Good afternoon. It is 4 p.m. here in Sea-Tac, Washington, August 13, 2024. I'm calling. My name is Mohammed Igal. I'm calling to order for our special council meeting today. Christina, will you take the roll call?
Mayor Mohammed Igal.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Iris Guzman.
Present.
Council members Sanait Naguse.
Here.
Peter Kwan.
I'm here.
James Lovell.
Present.
And Joe Vinson.
Present.
And Councilmember Jake Simpson is excused absent.
Thank you. Let's salute our flag. I salute the flag.
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I have to make a statement on the record. This meeting will be conducted in hybrid format with in-person and remote option for public participation. The meeting will be broadcast on CTV Government Access, Comcast Channel 21, and is live streaming on the city website. Do we have any public comments?
No, we do not have any in person or signed up for remote.
Okay, but we do have received a lot positive.
So, and just to be clear, we did have 2 people sign up, registered to sign up in person. I apologize, I was thinking they were remote. I do not know if they are here. We've got Kat Chun.
Yes.
Yep, okay.
Kat, you will have the microphone if you would like to speak, and you will have next 3 minutes. Yes. Yep. And would somebody help him to show how to use that? Next 3 minutes, all yours. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. My name is Kat Chun, C-A-T-C-H-U-N, and I'm a nearby resident of Tukwila. I'm not representing an organization today. So the closest major green space to where I live is North SeaTac Park, which I walk to every morning for my service position in the Washington Conservation Corps. Over the past 10 months, my WCC crew has performed environmental justice projects restoring underserved South King County parks, with the largest share of that being in North SeaTac Park. While I'm not representing any organization today, I'd like to briefly report to the Council on the needs and opportunities represented by Tub Lake Bog and the 55-acre parcel in North SeaTac Park. Speaking from my experience serving in the park, as well as researching and presenting about Tub Lake Bog at WCC's statewide training this year, I'll send out a fuller comment by email afterward. Tub Lake Bog is a rare 26-acre bog adjacent to the 55-acre parcel. Created slowly over 12,000 years, it's one of the last surviving bogs in King County. As a headwaters for Miller Creek, a critical salmon-bearing stream, the bog helps filter urban runoff before it decimates our salmon and the orcas of the Puget Sound that depend on them. In the same way, Rox Hill Bog near White Center in Seattle is critical to the health of the salmon of the Duwamish River, and so it's received massive investments in private, public, and grant funding of over $1 million toward its restoration, and is now a beloved community resource. Contrarily, the destruction of the bog of Bow Lake in Sea-Tac and its replacement by airport hotels has led to severe pollution, including toxic algal blooms and high fecal coliform levels in Des Moines Creek downstream. Tub Lake Bog and its surrounding watershed community could go either way, and this acquisition process provides our chance to decide which. Bogs are unlike any other wetland. They're defined by a miraculous half-living soil layer called peat, which takes hundreds of years to grow. That peat stores double as much carbon as all the forests on Earth. When a bog dries up, all that carbon is released, turning it from a natural wonder to a time bomb, sometimes literally. Peat is flammable. If ignored and allowed to degrade, Tub Lake Bog could burst into flame like Rox Hill Bog did in 2017, harming nearby residents. The forest of the 55-acre parcel is both a necessary buffer filtering runoff for the bog and a noise buffer from the airport for residents. Invasive English ivy blankets the parcel and can kill a tree in 20 years. In some areas of the parcel, we're nearing the end of that 20 years. A restoration crew could quickly cut survival rings around the base of each tree to save this upland forest in the short term. So far, my crew hasn't been allowed to prioritize this because of the uncertain ownership future of the parcel. As a global environmental priority, a bog provides the perfect bridge between local needs and regional and federal attention. The EPA, KCD, DNR, and plenty of other orgs could provide grants and partnerships for an environmental justice project, establishing a wetland preserve for the bog and its upland forest throughout the southern half of the park. Thank you all deeply for all your hard work until now to make this opportunity possible.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Mr. Chan. I would like to acknowledge that Council Member Simpson have joined us and beat the I-5 traffic. So nice to have you. Well, the next.
Okay, so then we also had 2 people sign up for remote comment, but they did not actually register, so they are not online. They didn't get the link. And then we received 79 written comments related to North Sea-Tac Park. There were 80, but 2 of them were duplicates, so we have 79.
Beautiful. Well, we actually get the second person who signed it, the in-person public comment is Sandy Han. Next 3 minutes is all yours.
I ran all the way here.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of the City Council, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I'm here as a defender of North Sea-Tac Park and to discuss a matter that holds significant potential for our community, the acquisition and restoration of the park. Because North Sea-Tac Park is more than just a green space. It is a vital community asset that offers recreational opportunities, environmental benefits, and a sense of place for our residents. Spanning 205 acres, I believe, this park is a sanctuary for families, athletes, and nature enthusiasts alike. It features sports fields, BMX track, mountain bike trails, rugby, and even a disc golf course. However, the park's true value extends beyond its amenities. Its environmental stewardship is key. North Sea-Tac Park plays a crucial role in our local ecosystem. It provides habitat for wildlife, helps mitigate urban heat islands, and improves air quality. By investing in this park, we are committing to preserving these environmental benefits for future generations. Community health and well-being is also critical. Access to green spaces is directly linked to improved physical and mental health. Parks like North Sea-Tac offer a place to exercise, relax, for social interaction, which are all essential for our community's well-being. At a time when mental health challenges are on the rise, providing accessible outdoor spaces is more important than ever. Finally, economic benefits. Investing in North Sea-Tac Park can also yield significant economic returns. Well-maintained parks increase property values, attract tourism, and can even reduce healthcare costs by promoting a healthier lifestyle. Moreover, the restoration of the park can create jobs and stimulate local businesses. To realize these benefits, I propose that we not only purchase North Sea-Tac Park, but actively seek grants to fund its restoration. There are numerous grant opportunities available. One that I found was the King County Parks Levy, which recently allocated $30 million to enhance parks and trails throughout the region. There are others at state and national level. By tapping into these resources, we can ensure that North Sea-Tac Park receives the attention and care it deserves without placing undue financial strain on our city budget. In conclusion, acquiring and restoring North Sea-Tac Park is an investment in our community's future. It is an opportunity to enhance our environment, improve public health, and boost our local economy. I urge you to consider this proposal and take the necessary steps to make North Sea-Tac Park a cornerstone of our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hunt. And now we are going to start for the presentation. This presentation is overview of North Sea-Tac Park to facilitate council discussion and to inform potential future council action around the protection and preservation of the park. It will be 90 minutes presentation. It will have cover 4 different and staff will cover it, led by Senior Management Analyst Anita Woodmass, Community Economic Development Director Ivan Maxim, Finance Director Gwyn Bailo, and Park and Recreation Director Mary Tuttle. It will be 90 minutes, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and Council. So tonight we're having a dedicated working session on North Sea-Tac Park, and there's a lot of interest in North Sea-Tac Park, and rightly so. This is a great community asset that we have. So before we start our presentation, and actually we're hoping to get through it in 35 minutes to allow as much time as we can for council discussion. Some of these might be helpful to keep in mind. So today what we're focused on is what do we want for North Sea-Tac Park, more so than how might we make it happen. So we're really looking for direction around goals, what to focus on, how important is it in relation to other projects when we look at cost, time and resources. We have 29 slides. There is a lot of information. We've divided it up into what we know and what we don't know and considerations. We have not done a feasibility, so it's just an information presentation. We have directors here. We are all here to answer any questions that you may have. Depending on the direction that council provides, we can come back at another time with a resolution to provide for a more formalised council direction. And Mayor, if you are amenable, given there's quite a few questions to prompt discussion, to enable you to participate and to track some of the discussion points, I am available to facilitate and just record some of those bigger points on the easel that's behind us, if that would be helpful to council.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So kicking off, we are here, staff are here to provide an overview of what we know and what we don't know about North Sea-Tac Park. We are doing that to enable council to have a discussion around the overall goals, and there is action requested, which is direction. And a question is, why is this important and why now? Why are we here tonight? So in 2022, the city passed a resolution to explore the feasibility of acquiring North Sea-Tac Park. In the 2 years since, the city has sent 2 letters to the Port Commission inviting discussion. And that third bullet point there is important. We're going to be having a more formal conversation at the Joint Advisory Committee in September. And so this conversation with council is providing some more direction and discussion ahead of that JAC meeting. It's also important because as city staff continue to commit resources to this, more council direction is needed as to the priority of the project in relation to some other city projects, and Gwen Pilo, our finance director, is going to give you a good overview of some of those bigger projects that we have going on in the city. And there are many unknowns, so there's a detailed feasibility analysis has not been undertaken. We're going to return to this slide at the end. These are the potential council actions. So the first 2 is to take no action, which could be just no action at this time. It doesn't have to be for a long time, or to provide the city manager direction to evaluate next steps and report back to council. What you'll see is number 3 and 4 there are the discussion questions or discussion items that we're looking for direction on. And that is providing the city manager direction around the level of effort and overall goals for North Sea-Tac Park. And are we concentrating our effort on the bigger North Sea-Tac Park, or are we going to focus on that 55 acres? And we're going to return to why that's an important question. Here are some discussion prompts. We're actually going to end on this slide, so we're going to come back to that. So if it's okay with you, I'm just going to move through because we'll jump on this one at the end. So the presentation is divided into what we know, what we don't know, what we need to consider, and then we have discussion. So starting with the map. So what is North Sea-Tac Park? And that might sound like a strange question, but it's different depending on how you look at it. So for our community, this is all North Sea-Tac Park. Ideally, they come and they just walk around and they're enjoying themselves, and they're oblivious to and not aware of who owns what and what's happening in the park. When we look at the map, it's a little bit different. If you look at the green only, that is city maintained and city leased. So that is what we typically think of as North Sea-Tac Park. Sunset Park in the red there is owned by King County, and Ryan Field is owned by the port and leased to a rugby team. So the city is not privy to those leases. So when we talk about North SeaTac Park, we are typically talking about what is in the green, because that is what we lease and we maintain. I'm going to walk you through the lease agreements because there's a couple of nuances here. I know there's a lot to take in there. So I'm going to draw your attention to the purple hashing on the right side there. That is the community centre. That is under lease with 17 years left on that lease. The green section and the yellow section, that is a separate lease that expires in 2070. The reason the yellow is called out separately is because it has a slight nuance in the lease. The port has the option to issue a notice to vacate with 100 days notice. That means that the city, with 180 days notice, the city would not be leasing that space. And that is because that space could be redeveloped with limited commercial development. And Evan Maxim is going to talk to that from Community and Economic Development. If you look down in the red, you have Ryan Field. The city is not privy to that lease. That is a lease between the Port of Seattle and a rugby team. And if you look at King County, the brown section, Sunset Park, owned by King County and currently closed. I'm going to turn this over to Community and Economic Development to talk about zoning and acquisition.
Thank you, Anita. Good evening, City Council, Mayor Gall, Deputy Mayor Guzman. My name is Evan Maxim. I'm your Community and Economic Development Director. As Anita mentioned a moment ago, I am going to be speaking to a number of slides here related to known constraints on the site. The first of which is the zoning. The zoning of the property, for the most part, the North SeaTac Park property, is AVC. AVC standing for Aviation Commercial Use, pardon me. The yellow properties that you'll see on the screen here are zoned P as in park, but the AVC uses do allow for a variety of different types of commercial use. And I'll note that the 55 acres, as Anita mentioned a moment ago, highlighted in green or a green outline on your map here, are the areas where we anticipate seeing potentially some kind of airport-related use moving forward. I'll note that the 55 acres was acquired in 1976. A portion of that 55 acres includes Pat Ryan Field. Pat Ryan Field is about 11 acres in area. We commonly, colloquially, refer to this as the 55 acres. It might be more appropriate to refer to it as the 44 acres when you reduce the area by Pat Ryan Field. There are federal funds, federal grant funds behind the acquisition of the 55 acres, which do limit the port's ability to sell. The remaining portion of North SeaTac Park, we really need to engage in further analysis around the restricted uses associated with those funds. We're not prepared to address those tonight. So that is one of our unknowns. Next slide, please. In terms of the 55 acres and evaluating possible uses on that site, the port does have a relatively recent, starting in 2016, series of documents that describe potential uses of the 55 acres. In 2016, you'll see that there was a port real estate strategic plan, similar to the city's strategic plan, which identified potential development of the site for aviation-related uses. This was updated in 2020 and specifically called out airport parking for airport employees on the 55 acres. When the SAMP project was initially initiated, it included the 55 acres. That was then modified in 2021, I understand, as part of the environmental review. So the current Sustainable Airport Master Plan does not include development of the 55 acres. I'll remind the council that SAMP document is under federal review at the moment, Federal Environmental Review, NEPA. We expect the NEPA environmental assessment, I believe, towards the end of this year. So looking forward, there's currently no city-known real estate or near-term projects on the 55 acres. The ideas appear to be conceptual with no specific Port Commission approved projects. Next slide, please. North SeaTac Park is also constrained by noise regulations, typically referred to as, they go by a couple different names. So Part 150 refers to actually the federal program that the port voluntarily enters into with the FAA to document aircraft noise exposure. This program is actually citywide, and the purpose behind that program is to establish noise abatement programs or projects and identify specific land uses that are compatible with the different noise levels mapped within the city of SeaTac. The port is in the process of working with the FAA to update the study now. This will be their fourth update. The original noise study, the Part 150 study, was completed in 1984. What this looks like in terms of the mapping is that we're mapping out day, night, average noise levels across the entire city. It's typically referred to as DNL. And again, those DNL restrictions start at 65 decibels, and then the restrictions on land use increase for every 5 decibels worth of noise. So with the next slide, you'll see the noise contour map. Pardon me, it'll be one more slide after this one. Let me explain DNL a touch more. But you'll see a map here in a moment, and I'm going to try and just define it for you briefly. So DNL, as I mentioned a moment ago, that's the day-night average sound level. It's a metric that's intended to reflect a person's cumulative noise exposure through a full day and night over a 24-hour period. It's expressed as the average noise level, average day of the year, based on annual aircraft operations. So it's meant to be a generalized metric. Does not mean, for example, if you go out to North SeaTac Park right now, you would experience a 65 decibel noise event. It is the average across a full 24-hour period. Again, it's mapped based on contours that are reviewed and approved by the FAA. It is the basis for the land use limitations that we'll see, I believe, on the next slide. And they've identified those limitations using the 65 DNL as their starting limitation. This is a map across the entire city, and you'll notice so you have a black outline of the city of SeaTac. You'll see a light gray that gets darker, centered on the airport runway, and you'll notice several variants of the gray coloring. Each shade of gray represents a different DNL level, if you'd go to the next slide. And so what you should be able to see on this map is really a zoomed in picture of North SeaTac Park, again outlined in green. Pardon me, I almost said gray. It's outlined in green. You'll also see Sunset Park outlined in red. Ryan Field is, of course, in blue. And you'll see the actual noise contours, the DNL contours across North SeaTac Park. I'll note, much of North SeaTac Park is either in the 65 DNL contour or the 70 DNL contour. Again, as the numbers go up, the restrictions go up as well. You'll see on the left-hand side of your screen specific land uses that are allowed. And recall that we don't start regulating really until we exceed 65 DNL in terms of noise limitations. So the leftmost column describes the various types of land uses. I'll note under public use, you'll see parking as the bottom row in that second block of text. So you'll see it says, I believe, public use, and then lowest row in that line is parking. For 65 DNL, that would be, for a DNL of less than 65, that would be an allowed use. You'll see the Y. It's also an allowed use in the 65 to 70 DNL limitation. And then you'll see a Y in the rightmost column with a parenthetical 2. The 2 actually represents some additional design requirements that the port would need to incorporate into their parking if they were locating that parking within a DNL of 75 or greater. And with that, I will turn it over to Director Mary Tuttle, our Parks and Rec Director.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So these next couple of slides I will not spend a great deal of time on because I believe Council is already aware of the environmental considerations for Sunset Park. So Sunset Park is open for drop-in use. King County does maintain it. The city previously did maintain it, and because of the environmental considerations for that site, it has been turned back over to King County to be able to operate. So what we know about Sunset Park is that there were studies done in the 1990s that indicated high levels of contamination. It was a former dump site for used bunker oil. And we know that this is extensive based on the reports that we have seen. We also understand that unlike heavy metals such as arsenic and lead, that those can be capped and remediated through topsoil remediation. This particular contamination is between 10 to 12 feet down. It cannot be remediated that way. So that is a piece of just some knowledge we want to make sure that we're framing our thoughts around. And the other thing is that because it can't be capped and oil is viscous, it can move. So we're not sure about the remaining sites around Sunset Park, and that's because we haven't done any testing to really understand that. So that is a piece of consideration there. Could you go to the next slide, please? And then we heard great public comment at the beginning talking about and describing the peat bog and tub lake. And that area, we understand that is a high conservation value area. Headwaters to Miller Creek, a salmon-bearing stream, which is sitting adjacent to Sunset Park. All of this is topography is sloping downward toward those areas. So there are some environmental considerations. The remaining 55 acres with Pat Ryan Field, also topography indicates that it is sloping downward. So again, we would want to do some additional testing to try to kind of suss that out. And then the remaining areas of North SeaTac Park. Next slide. And then when we're looking at safety zones, this is something that we have been working over the past year. I can say I've seen staff working with various providers who are nonprofits sitting within that space trying to determine what the allowances are for people that are going into that outer safety zone. And within the outer safety zone, it is 50 people per acre with a maximum of 150 people. So that's what we have been informed of, and it does state that in one of our leases that we have been able to see. Obviously, different active and passive uses within those areas. So kind of more north are the ball fields and then the BMX, and then we've got, you know, the mountain bike trail sitting within the outer safety zone area, and obviously the peat bog sitting within that as well. So because of all of that, we also have some unknown knowledge around what kind of commercial development could take place. We know that there are going to have to be buffers, particularly around this peat bog wetland area. Next slide.
Thank you. I'm going to take the next two slides. So I'm going to cover the agency correspondence, and that's between the city and the port. At a high level, in summary, the city has sent 2 letters to the port, and the port has sent 2 letters back to the city on the topic specifically of acquiring North SeaTac Park. In May 22, there was a council resolution that passed expressing the council's desire to explore the feasibility of transferring ownership to the city. Following that resolution, the city sent a letter to the port requesting that port staff engage the city on discussions regarding North SeaTac Park. The port responded, stating that to engage on the topics, they would like to do that through the Port City Joint Advisory Committee, we commonly call the JAC. Jumping forward to 2024, so just last month, the city sent a letter to the Port Commission citing the FAA Reauthorization Act, which I'm going to cover in a moment, and requesting further conversation around this topic. The port responded acknowledging and also stating that they would like to continue that conversation at the JAC. And if you recall at the beginning, the next JAC meeting is scheduled for September. That's why we're here tonight. The FAA Reauthorization Act. So this is important for the city. It allows the port to sell North SeaTac Park to the city as a for recreation purpose below fair market value, or permanently restrict the property for recreation or park without paying or otherwise obtaining payment of fair market value for the property. Senator Patty Murray and Representative Adam Smith are supportive of the city's efforts to enhance and preserve regional open spaces for underserved communities. The Act will transition at the end of 2028, so we have a 5-year window. And there are several restrictions, as you could imagine, in that Act around what that could look like, and the city has not conducted a detailed feasibility about what that could be at this time.
Good evening, Council. I'm going to present the next section, funding of city projects and current workload. So currently, you might know that we have under committed projects that we funded. We have the maintenance facility, which is approximately going to be $10.5 million. It is currently in design, and we currently do not have funding for it. And then the Des Moines Creek Park improvements, it is also in design. However, it is funded. We do have a policy that funds our CIP through the first 3 years. So the Des Moines Creek Park improvements fall within those 3 years, and the maintenance facility falls outside those 3 years. The Civic Campus, which of course we are all discussing, is estimated at $120 million. That is in feasibility right now. The Community Center renovations, I can't speak tonight, sorry. We are starting design for that in 2027. North SeaTac Park soccer field renovations, design starts in 2026. Those are both unfunded because they are outside of the first 3 years of the CIP. And then we have the unknowns, the Housing Opportunity Fund, which we are starting our early discussions on that, and the bullpen site, which is also in early discussions and being looked at as a possible option to purchase. Next slide, please. All right. So again, all funds are currently committed through 2027. I would like to talk a little bit about our general fund estimated excess ending fund balance at the end of 2024. We do estimate that we'll have about $23.3 million. However, as budget numbers are coming in, we are finding that we had a few surprises. So we're trying to figure out how we can manage that and still maintain a healthy excess fund balance. That excess fund balance is available to fund projects with no restrictions. And those are the orange and purple projects that are on the previous slide if we needed to. So the risks to use this money for the purchase of North SeaTac Park would be that if we cannot fund the CIP projects through other means, then we would have to push out those projects or not fund them at all, and a delay in that planned CIP project if we can't identify those alternate funding resources. Again, as one of our public commenters stated, there are grants available, there are other options we can look at. However, I just wanted to point out that there has been some discussion around that excess fund balance, and wanted to bring the constraints around that to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Gwen. So moving on to, that covers what we do know about North SeaTac Park. So now we're transitioning to what we don't know. And this could be things we might need more feasibility on, things we just need to understand. It could be considerations. It does not mean that these are bad, quote unquote. It just means that we're just not sure.
Okay, so related to parks planning, this is if the city was to assume complete responsibility for the park. So we have a few pluses and minuses here. So obviously on the plus side, more local control of the park. And that really I tie to future planning, having this understanding of being able to, with assurance, say to community, these are the things we are going to do, and here they are not going to be taken away from your use. So that would be on the plus side. As far as city-driven tree preservation, we are doing that now. Have plans to do that much more extensively, especially since the land stewardship program that the port has, they have excluded North SeaTac Park from that, so the expectation is that we would be able to be more involved. On kind of that minus side, The tree maintenance, one thing we are unsure of and don't really know is that in the land stewardship plan, it does talk about height of trees and it potentially being, a danger to aircraft with landing and takeoff. And we do know that there are portions that are in the outer safety zone. So those are some things that we would want to take into consideration. Safety zone management, insurance coverage, and associated responsibilities and risks, those are things that we are not sure about. We don't know what that looks like if the city were to completely take ownership of this asset. The North SeaTac Park Master Plan update is planned for 2026. There was a decision card that was presented. We are still considering doing that update. The original plan was done in the 1990s. It has things in it like equestrian trails, which we know are not things that our community is interested in, and so we would want to go back out to community as we're thinking about future and making sure that we're capturing their desires for this. And then when we think about grants, that we've been through this also with the RCO, Recreation Conservation Office grants, they're asking us to be able to give a 20-year guarantee for some of the things that we are doing inside our park properties. So when we are not sure if an asset is going to be available for community, that puts restrictions on us as well as our partners that are nonprofits that are sitting within that particular area. So uses of safety zones, park planning, we right now, whenever we want to install an asset in the park, such as the lighting that we're doing at the BMX track this fall, we do go through the FAA for an approval process. We're not sure if we are going to continue to need to do that should we want to build in more infrastructure or assets into the park in the future. 4, 5, and 6, we talked about Sunset Park and potential contamination, the critical area constraints, and the additional contamination within North SeaTac Park that's unknown. And then staff are really wanting to consider feasibility of legal analysis of the potential contamination-related issues should that extend beyond the bounds of Sunset Park.
Thank you, Mary. So we have 2 more slides, and that's going to pop us right on time. So when it comes to the lease, here are our unknowns. We need more feasibility to understand what the purchase and sale restrictions might be on the property, given the way that it was purchased. We don't know if and when the port may terminate its lease on that 44 acres. If you recall, they have the 180-day notice. We don't know. And the community centre lease has 17 years remaining, and the future after that 17 years is unknown. When it comes to the port, we have an interlocal agreement, which we have for 10 years between the port and the city. We're going to start those discussions in 2026, so right around the corner, to enter into that in 2028. So it's unknown what may come from a new revised ILA. And it's unknown what the port is planning, when the port is planning to expand its operations in the short and the long term. And our last slide here, when it comes to the FAA, on the Reauthorization Act, we need to really understand some of the parameters around what does an agreement or sale within that 5-year window actually look like. How is the land valued? Below market value, what does that mean? What is the market value? And there's also a risk or potential that the FAA could classify the park as unsafe for recreation. That would result in restricted access and diminish the recreation value due to safety concerns because of its proximity to the airport. So that concludes the information part of the presentation, and this is where Council will be engaged on the discussion. So just as a quick reminder, you have 2 potential Council actions here: no action, or to ask the city manager, provide direction for the city manager to evaluate next steps and come back. And we're going to have a discussion. Here are 3 questions to prompt the discussion. We're looking for direction on the goals. What is the council's overall goals for North SeaTac Park? It could be all of these, but is it primarily conservation? Is it active open space, which is sports scheduling, passive open space, walking trails? Are we focused on North SeaTac Park or that 55 acres? And what is council's level of support for this initiative compared to other projects that we have that Gwen touched on, and relative to schedule and staff capacity and resourcing? And so, Mayor, I'm going to hand it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita, Director Maxim, and Director Bailo, and Director Tatal. Okay, so, Mr. Kwan, any comments, any question?
Yeah, thanks. So, first of all, there's just too much information. I appreciate the information, but it's so much. And so if we were to go line by line to talk about everything we discussed, this meeting will go until tomorrow easily. So I'll just try to summarize and just go straight to the potential council actions, because there's only 4 there, right? And so regarding either number 1, no action, or number 2, more info needed, I'm pretty sure we can all agree there's more info needed, okay? And then going to the discussions, direction requested, number 1 is direction to provide city manager direction around the level of effort and overall goals for North SeaTac Park. I thought it was pretty clear that the council sent 2 letters to the port and adopted a resolution officially, and passed unanimously with the intent to preserve North SeaTac Park, potentially obtain North SeaTac Park, and preserve it as recreational green space. So I thought that was pretty clear. The level of effort, I guess, is the question, and I would say that the longer we wait, the more urgent this is getting. This started years ago, and we're finally having a full council discussion today, which I think makes this even more urgent. Also, with the level of effort, the FAA Reauthorization Act, as we know, is for 5 years. That has an expiration date, obviously, and on top of that, through previous discussions, every 2 years with the local election going on, the elected official lineup changes. And so every time it changes, we seem to have to start all over again from square one. And so I think the urgency here is very high. I'd like to get this at least moving forward within the next few months, if possible, but ASAP. And then finally, the provide city manager direction regarding the effort, if the effort is concentrated on North SeaTac Park or the 55 acres, order of priority. I'm guessing North SeaTac Park, the question here is whether the entire park as a whole or just the 55 acres. I would say the 55 acres should be the priority right now, and the reason obviously because it's urgent due to the condition or the terms of the lease, as well as the potential for more immediate development. So I hope that was pretty clear, but I will also say that, although we received how many support emails, just in the last couple of days related to this, there has been ongoing support from the community over the last, I don't know, before I even got on the council for the preservation of North SeaTac Park, from residents, from the community. I'm guessing hundreds, at least, if not thousands, over the years of direct public comments, letters, one-on-one conversations, community, meetings or whatnot. So there's tremendous community support. We also have a lot of, I would say 100% support from community organizations such as the Botanical Garden, the BMX group, the Northwest Mountain Bike Group, and all of the other organizations that use the park for activities. We also have, beyond that, support from surrounding cities and council members in other cities who actually promote our park as well. And now we have confirmed support from our state and federal elected officials. So the support is just across the board. I don't know a single person who does not support this at this point. And if there is one, I'd like to know. I think the direction, to reiterate, we need more information. We want the city manager, or at least I would like the city manager to make this ASAP priority one effort because of the ticking expiration and focus on the 55 acres for now. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Simpson.
Yeah, I mean, I think that sums up largely, my sentiment as well. I don't, having been involved in some of the JAC stuff when I first got on the council, and now I think this presentation, I'm really grateful for it because it helps have all of kind of the knowledge that all of us have been splitting as part of the JAC in one place. And it's going to be a good reference, I think, to continue to go back to. So I really appreciate all of that. Because before it was just kind of like we would share this knowledge with one another in one-off quick meetings. And it is a lot to take in at one time, but it's sort of like refreshing my memory on what's happened so far. I think, the intention, as far as I understood it from the lobbying trip, and all of the lobbying that we did to Congress around the FAA Reauthorization Act was to sort of eliminate the excuse, so to speak, on making sure that, the port can't say anymore that, well, we have to develop this because of the way that we bought it and all of that. I think now that we've been able to pass that language, we should take action as quickly as possible. I completely agree with Councilmember Kwan. And I think, I would prioritize those 44 acres also. We also, as a side note, even though we're not directly, involved in the Pat Ryan field, there was a moment like a year ago where like all of these local rugby teams were emailing us asking us to protect that park too. So it's just been tons, like Councilmember Kwan said, thousands of people reaching out about this. I don't know, it is a little bit daunting thinking about the potential impacts to the city in terms of cleanup and things like that, and not knowing about contamination levels. But what I heard a couple slides ago was interesting to me. If the FAA deemed it unsafe for recreation, why would they suddenly make that decision if we acquired the park? It seemed, I'm actually asking, like, would that be a retaliatory effort on some parties that would be upset about our acquisition of the park, or how would that happen? Or why would it happen?
I guess I'll take this one. I do not have an answer for you.
Okay.
That is something that we're going to have to dig into.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just seems like it would be abnormal having this place be for recreation for as long as it has been, and then suddenly having it deemed unsafe seems bizarre. But anyway, that's the only question I have. I really appreciate this. It's great to be finally having the conversation as a council. So I'm hoping we get this done really fast and we move quickly. That's all. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Councilmember Simpson. Councilmember Deputy Mayor Guzman.
A lot of the same as what's already been said. I think, I feel like we're dragging our feet on this, and so it's nice that we can just kind of launch now and really just force the port's hand at this point, because we've already sent letters, we've already had conversations, we've already met with them. Like, we've done a lot, and so now that we have all this information in one concise location, it's time to just move forward. The only thing I am kind of like not totally on board is just the 55 acres. I think I would like all of the park, because then we have a chance to develop it and to maintain it and just do everything we need to, and we don't have to go back again in the future asking for the rest of the park. So I don't know what that would take necessarily. So that's the only question I do have.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Guzman. Councilmember Vincent.
Thank you, Mayor Eagle. Excellent presentation, lots of information. I did a ton of research over the weekend, received a few phone calls, just reaffirming my initial thoughts, and I still support the city owning North SeaTac Park. And I guess for me, if we are to provide direction to the city manager, it's let's get the ball rolling on this and get that feasibility study started ASAP. I do want to know a little bit more about the knowns and unknowns of what to expect. And just as the previous speakers had mentioned, I'm in alignment with, especially so I would prefer that we take a look at owning all of North SeaTac Park. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Vincent. Councilmember Lavelle.
Yeah, thank you everyone for your work on this. Thanks to current and previous council members who have worked on this for years, and current and previous city staff who have worked on this for years, and of course our partners at the port who have repeatedly said let's keep the conversation going. Thank you, of course, to Senator Murray and Congressman Smith. We got to meet with their staff earlier this year. This was the main thing we were pushing, and I think that should suggest where my support lands, which is I do want the park. But I have to ask a couple questions just because my appetite for risk changes based on the answers. I think the thing that's obvious to me is this question around DNL and the restrictions. So if we can go to slide 16, I want to make sure my understanding is correct. It's the map with the gray. One more, and then we'll go to this slide. Okay, so my read of this slide is that any action we discuss here, whether it's 55 acres or entire park or any portion therein, this includes our partners at the county who own some section there, it's all within that second tier of DNL. I mean, it's all within the first tier of 65 or above. Looks like anything we do would affect that second tier, which is at DNL 70, which has different restrictions than DNL 65. Can you proceed to the next slide? I don't know if this is just a poorly titled table, but why is it that 70 shows up in the middle column and in the right column? Why is it that 65 shows up in the left column and in the middle column? If something has a score of 65, should it not land squarely in one column? Does that question? So my concern is that if we're going after this park and it's at 70, which column is it? Which restrictions are we subject to? I think that might be answerable. I see Director Maxim's up. Yeah.
Thank you, Councilmember Lovell. I believe it's partially answerable this evening and partially not, if that's a word, partially not. Part of my language is deteriorating as well as the evening progresses. So you'll note that the left-hand column, it actually says below 65, which I can only see on the closer screen. This is the table that you see in the left-hand side of the screen is an excerpt from the current Part 150 study. The center column is DNL 65 to 70, and then to your point, the right-hand column is DNL 70 to 75. So specifically at DNL 70, I cannot answer that question for you this evening.
Dang, that was the juicy part too.
I apologize, and it does warrant further investigation, further exploration by your staff. And you know that the DNL 70 mapping that you see on the screen on the right-hand side comes from our GIS and is extracted from the Part 150 study. My understanding is that truly represents the 70 and above DNL mapping. So what we can assume is that and again, it's an assumption bearing confirmation, is that the 70 to 75 column would apply to the middle shade of gray that encumbers North SeaTac Park.
So the middle column might actually be like 65 to 69?
69.99.
That's your best guess then?
But that's a guess,
yeah.
Councilmember. I would need to verify.
And I think the reason this, I think of our current, the Highline Botanical Garden, I got to enjoy a performance there on Friday. Not that you all know what I was doing Saturday or Friday, but that was when we had the Polynesian group there. I think that's a nature exhibit, is it not? So that would, if we were to do other similar things, like the Highland Botanical Garden in this space, I'd rather not get a park in our access that has a lot of restrictions where we couldn't do things like that. Now, there's still all sorts of other things we could do, as you can see, even if it was in that 70, 75 category. It just changes a little bit of my appetite, specifically around cost, right? If we're going to be getting this as a fair market value, obviously that is very different than if it's under fair market value, which is authorized by FAA, or if it was a $1 transfer or something like that. Obviously, I'd love something like that. But if we're evaluating the other priorities of the city, with the civic campus, that's a big number on there. Very quickly, I can start to see that we're kind of limited on what we can do, and it changes a little bit of my appetite. So I think that's probably representative of a few other questions you all will be digging into around the kinds of restrictions and regulatory impacts of not just this map with the gray expanding blobs of sound waves or whatever those look like. So when those answers come through, it'll change not my desire to have the park, but my appetite for the costs. And so that last slide we were on, which was asking, what our focus, priorities, I can't quite answer all of that immediately, but in a nutshell, definitely want this to go at the same speed everyone else is talking about. I need more clarity before I give you answers to number 3, as far as the relative to other projects part. But as far as do I want city staff to be focusing on this, I think, what did Councilmember Kwan call it, number 1A priority. Whatever else is at that top of the list, as long as this doesn't bump something else out, I'd say let's pursue it at that highest level. Thank you for entertaining my questions.
Thank you, Councilmember Lebel. Councilmember Nguzi.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, just echo everything that everyone has said so far. I absolutely agree that we need to focus our attention here. Given the time sensitivity, given the clear support from the council members and surrounding community, I think that necessitates that staff prioritize this. I, too, have questions. I agree with specifically Councilmember Kwan that I believe that we should prioritize initially acquiring just the 55 acres. Because 1, it's at the greatest risk of industrial development. 2, an analysis has not been done for that site. So I would like to understand the implications, benefits, risks, all of that. And then, again, time being a factor. We know that these studies take a long time. We've been in discussion for years about just the 55 acres, so that 141, so many unknowns, that would also take additional time. So I think that we should focus the efforts initially on the 55 acres. And then also the port's willingness to transfer land ownership or sell the land. So I think that's going to be a crucial step as well as we move forward with any of our preservation efforts and discussions around acquiring the land. Of course, the fiscal implications as well, which we'll get there. But I think, I think if the question is around 55 or 141, I'm interested in the 141, but initially let's focus on the 55. Let's prioritize that. And around goals, I can't answer at this time. I know we talked, of course, conservation and passive open space for recreation, but we don't understand the eligible uses. And I also think that the council, I think we need to have a discussion around our risk appetite, right? Do we acquire or try to purchase without knowing those risks and understanding that there may be a potential that we spend money or not and not be able to use it in the way that we intended, right, for additional recreation opportunities. But if the effort is truly for conservation, then I think, yes, let's move forward. So I think it would be helpful to understand all those benefits, risks, any potential implications for both sites, but move forward in discussions around the 55 acres. So, thank you.
I will recognize again Councilmember Juan.
Thank you. So I've been following this for a long time, and so I've been taking some notes about some of the concerns and questions that the council has brought up, and so I'd like to comment a little bit to address those. So first of all, I do understand and agree the cleanup is daunting. That has been potential contamination has been an issue. Not a whole lot of it. Not a whole lot of confirmation is available, so we first need that. But regardless, even if there is contamination, there's plenty of cleanup, grant funds available, Superfund sites, and all of that. So I don't think that should be, one of the biggest concerns. Also, even if there is contamination, from what I understand, as long as you don't disturb the soil, should be okay. So, unless we start digging or something, right? I mean, so there's that. And then the 55 acres, of course, I think every single one of us want to preserve the park in its entirety, the entire park, right? But the reason for the 55 acres is the urgency, the amount of available resources we have, right? The amount of funding we potentially have or it will cost, and also all of those different leases, instead of trying to untangle this entire puzzle, I think just to deal with the 55-acre deal would be a little simpler. DNL restrictions. DNL has actually been shrinking. If you pay attention to the very first map from 40 years ago to 20 years ago to now. Why? Because planes are getting quieter, and as they get quieter every year, the DNL zone keeps shrinking, which means the restrictions will also be more relaxed. That's just technology. So FAA land value assessment was a big question. So we don't know how FAA assesses the valuation. So regarding the assessment, I think that we need to conduct our own real estate assessment or whatever, so that we have our assessment, and that should be assessed as a park, because we're not going to be building houses or warehouses here, right? It's going to be preserved as a park, and so what is the value of this property as a park? Then along this line, because Sunset Park, earlier it says it's unknown, right? And King County still currently owns it. I thought we were in the process of getting that ownership transferred from King County. I don't know what happened or where we are. But why not ask King County to conduct an assessment of their property and let us know, of whatever, valuation, contamination, blah, 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 right? And then going back to urgency, I will say that as I've been involved with this, we were very, very close to getting this whole thing started 2 years ago, until we had an election and then all of the lineup of the players changed. I will also say we were very, very close 4 years ago until after the election, and then the elected officials changed. And so every 2 years, it seems like we got to start this all over again. And so we're coming up on this pretty soon, next year, right? So that's part of the urgency. Thanks.
Yes, Councilman Lavelle.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just my ego, but I saw a JL on the chart paper, and I thought that might be me. Yeah. I think you're looking for me to make a firm commitment to the 55 acres or the entire park. And surprisingly, you couldn't read my mind, because in my mind, I was telling you 55 acres priority. As I think Senite and pretty much everyone else said, yes, whole park, but let's talk about that. Let's get the 55 acres going first, because that's the part that's in most jeopardy. Was there another thing I failed to express telepathically?
Direction to the city manager regarding do nothing or explore feasibility.
Well, I don't think my direction to city manager will ever be do nothing. But on this particular one, I would explore feasibility with all possible force, whatever the strongest language is there. And I think there's probably others you were trying to get. I know Mayor Gall hasn't spoken yet, so I think that you got everything you need from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Lavelle. I actually share with your sentiments and comments 100%, not 99 even. I don't think there is any other project more important to people of SeaTac than North SeaTac Park. We have to obtain, we have to preserve, and we have to protect it. And there is, yes, urgency that, politics change. We have good chance to get this back. And because I remember 2019 and 2021 and 2023, so we have a good chance. We have commissioners who live in this area, who actually use that park, who carries people who live in that area. So this is our moment. The reason we went to Washington, D.C. to advocate the port interests, 2023, yeah, 2023, was we were advocating many things. But I was there because only one thing, and that was North SeaTac Park. And I told them, actually, the commissioner at that time, that I am here to support you, but I want you to know that I have only one interest, and that's North SeaTac Park. So we have this chance. Let's move on. I am with the 55 acres because the urgency of that, and I will actually agree with everything else that you said, that instructing staff and the city manager to engage to the Port Authority through the CHAC committee. So I appreciate you. If there's any, yes, Mr. Vincent.
Thank you. This question is to the staff. Is it safe to assume that prioritizing the 55 acres would be more manageable versus the entire park?
I don't think we know, is the short answer, council member. I think what you've given us tonight allows us to, and hopefully I'm not out of line, figure out how to make the next step forward and come back to city council and describe to you what the path looks like.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Guzman.
Yeah, that was kind of what I was gonna not necessarily ask, but the reason why I feel that it's important to try to get all of it at once is because it might be just a one and done, right? If the FAA language says, the reauthorization language says that to sell it, that it can be sold like below market value, then that doesn't mean just the 55 acres, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't see why we shouldn't explore all of it. I don't feel like it's an either or, like, oh, if we don't get all of it, then we're gonna lose the 55 acres, right? Or we can only do the 55 acres now and then maybe later the rest of the park.
Maxim.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Guzman. I appear to be saying I don't know a lot this evening. And to your question on the FAA Reauthorization Act, I believe this is part of what we need to explore further given the council's direction tonight. So we will do so and report back.
Okay, any other comments, questions? It seems to be, yes, I'm Director Maxim.
Thank you, Mayor. Apologies for interrupting. I will note that the next step, of course, is to go to the JAC and discuss this further. And I don't want to leave my comments hanging as they were without acknowledging that next step.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. So you have your directions? Anything that, any questions you may have? You take your time, actually.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I will clarify what I think I heard.
Please do.
That there is a majority preference to focus on the 55 acres in the initial phase of this as opposed to North SeaTac Park. It is overwhelmingly a high priority for council, and the direction to the city manager is to come back with the next steps on how to undertake a feasibility and what that might look like after the JAC.
It seems to be, no, okay. So yes, 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 and Mr. Kwan.
Yeah, I would like to add that it's still important to have some kind of evaluation assessment over this, the internal independent real estate valuation or something like that as part of it, because that is going to kick off the entire discussion, I think, when it comes down to it.
Right. So, okay, I will recognize Councilmember Neguzzi.
Okay. Given Councilmember Kwan's comment, just trying to understand order of operations here. So, are you suggesting that staff conduct some sort of a study prior to going to JAC?
Yes, I think that we would like to have that before we go into JAC,
Okay.
or as soon as possible.
As soon as
If it's
okay.
not possible by then I understand there's some time
Yeah,
issues.
that makes sense to me, because that'll give us the additional information that we need so that we can have consensus as you all go into your JAC meeting.
Director Maxim.
Thank you, Council. I just seeking clarification around the order of events. I believe your next JAC meeting is in September, and I believe the request from Councilmember Kwan was around valuation of North Sea-Tac Park. I don't know that we could produce valuation of North Sea-Tac in part or in whole between now and early September when your JAC meeting is. So I think this is an important point for the city manager and for the council, that sequencing, we could, I suppose, delay the JAC discussion while we pursued the valuation, or have the JAC discussion and pursue the valuation after.
So JAC has been delayed quite a bit, and so I want to move this thing forward. If we need to meet JAC more frequently, I'm all in favor of that as well. So, but regarding the valuation specifically for the 55 acres, right? Because that is going to be the beginning of the discussion. But I understand if we cannot get that before the September, I think the JAC, that's okay. We should still have that meeting just to connect with elected officials on the other side, at the port side, so that we all are in agreement with what we are trying to accomplish moving forward here. That's all. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. That was kind of where I raised mine, as Councilmember Neguse was kind of trying to draw your attention to. Mary Gall is like, earlier someone said, well, next step is the JAC, and I was trying to process that. That's not what I want the next step to be. I think the next step is start the work on everything we can do before the JAC. I don't want to go into the JAC as a city and get caught off guard by all sorts of things that can come up in that meeting when we just haven't even like explored any of it. So, I think it's fair to say that, yeah, a true good evaluation of the land can't be done before the next JAC, but you can certainly start that process. And if it's a matter of staff time versus consultant time or something to get closer to that number, because, yeah, I do see these with many things. I see the days, weeks, months. The days are long, but the years are short, and the time between council meetings feels like a long time sometimes. Then you realize we're in September, and then we're in December, and then we're looking at political continuity issues. Still supportive, I would say, but it's just you kind of got to restart and get affirmation from the current council again, right? So I could see this really taking a lot longer if we decide that everything has to wait between official meetings between JAC and us. So the other thing is, I know you're saying we don't know even all the things we don't know about the property. So starting to nail those things down as early as possible seems really like a pretty high priority to me, because I don't want to come to the meeting in September after the JAC, or is there a council meeting? Yeah, there'll be a council meeting after JAC, and have it be something where you're presenting ideas to us that we could have kind of checked off earlier. So I'm not sure if that's clear, but just what you can figure out between now and the JAC is important to prioritize. I don't think I'm giving you any specifics other than, because like you're saying, we don't know exactly what we don't know. But land valuation, even a ballpark going into the meeting would probably be helpful to the city manager and the council members who are on that, because I don't think anyone wants to get there and have sticker shock and possibly affect the temperature in the room, which would be a fair reaction to be surprised if it was anywhere from 0 to whatever the number might be, right? So try to get something.
Thank
I
you,
guess.
Okay, you want your reception? Okay, go ahead.
Yes, thank
Please.
you, Mayor. Just to clarify what a process might typically look like when we undertake a feasibility study. So typically what we would come back to council with, either through committee or council, is we would scope what a feasibility would include. And we've already talked about some of those this evening, such as the valuation, what could some of those goals look like. We would want to understand what an environmental scoping would look like, if there's different levels of doing that. There's sort of a variety of things. So we would take a little bit of time to scope what a feasibility would look like, and then we would come forward with a budget amendment to be able to engage a consultant to undertake that work, and then we would proceed with that work. And so typically, you know, something like that could take many months, and that would be something along the lines of providing city manager direction in terms of moving forward. And what I'm hearing is, what can we figure out and know ahead of the JAC meeting in light of, like, so those are both running concurrently, perhaps those processes.
Thank you very much. And that was my assumption, actually, given the authorization, the city manager, that he will have, or she will have, all of those informations before we go to the check. So, Councilmember Ngusi.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate this discussion. I think for me, there are two specific things that I would like before the next JAC meeting to come before the council, if possible. I think the first is around any of the FAA restrictions for the use of the 55 acres as well as the 141 acres. I believe that's information that the port should have, as they are currently, you know, have ownership over the land. And the second would be if we could just do a quick search on the Department of Ecology website of any of the contaminated sites in Washington, specifically the 55 acres as well as the 141. I know that, you know, there's information on Sunset Park and the different contaminants that are there. If we could get some information, at least initially, to see if there's history with the 141 acres, at least that would give us a little bit of peace of mind if it has or has not been done. And if we could initiate a request for that to be done. If not, I'm not sure what that process looks like, but if staff could look into that as well. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Any last comments or thought or questions? I don't see a good one here. Okay. All right. So you have your direction. All right. All right. Okay. Very good. So it is 5:17, and I will adjourn this special meeting.